Hey folks, I'm Spencer, and on today's episode of Cult Mania we're looking at what is probably one of the best directorial debuts of all time, David Lynch's Eraserhead. I'll be honest, I've been trying to think of what on earth I can say about Eraserhead that hasn't already been said. I mean, it is one of the most singularly bizarre, weird films of the 70s. It is the quintessential midnight movie, and probably the greatest student film ever made, if we sort of play a bit fast and loose with the term. I mean, Lynch is one of the greatest living directors, so well known for making weird films, and yet this is still probably his most uniquely weird film, filled with twisted yet beautiful imagery and so much stuff that he's continued to improve on and work on over the course of his career. It is like this perfect starting point for the trajectory his career would take. The plot of Eraserhead, well, Eraserhead doesn't have the most conventional of plots, but roughly it follows Henry Spencer, played by David Lynch mainstay Jack Nance. He lives in this sort of weird industrial wasteland, and towards the start of the film learns that his partner has given birth to something that, using her words, they're not even sure if it's a baby. From here on, the plot is meandering is the word that comes to mind, but that's underselling it. It sort of drifts along in this dreamlike, or probably more appropriate, nightmarish kind of way. I mean, time in the film is inconsistent, logic is inconsistent, and so is reality, but that's part of the charm of Eraserhead. I don't think any other film manages to fully sort of embrace this dreamlike state in which you just sort of drift between moments. It really does have that sort of logic. And yet, I think that the film has just enough plot, just enough sort of forward momentum that it keeps the viewer engaged. I think there are a lot of other sort of arty, drifty films that, you know, you just have moments where characters look concerned into the distance for what feels like forever. And you do get shots like that in Eraserhead, but I mean, you know, it's just under 90 minutes. Lynch actually cut quite a lot of the plot out, and I think it means that the film carries on at this pace that you are just being bombarded with weird images, and it never slows down in the way a lot of other sort of contemplative, arty films do. Character is another strange thing within Eraserhead. Jack Nance gives this sort of beautifully wide-eyed, naive performance. You know, he's so completely out of his depth, he has no idea what's going on, and his face will tell you that throughout most of the film. It's quite amazing to watch a film in which you look at a character pulling a face and then you realise that you are also pulling that face, because you're like... Most other characters within the film only tend to appear for about 1 or 2 scenes. This can lead the film to feel a little bit sort of sketch-like, but so many of the characters are so ridiculously memorable because they only have their sort of iconic moments. I mean, Mr. X is one of my favourite Lynch characters, and he's in the film for about 10 minutes. And I think it's great to see, even at this early stage in his career, Lynch is able to make these wonderfully weird, slightly creepy yet slightly hilarious characters that feel so removed from what you understand as a person, and yet they still have this sort of deep-rooted humanity. And I think that's something that you really do see develop over his career. But I think here you get the sort of strange prototype of that character type that he does so well. The film is shot in such glorious black and white, and I mean, even from the second the film starts, I think, you know, the first shot is so unlike anyone else would start a film, that you are sort of instantly grabbed by it. So much of the film is imagery of just this sort of broken, grimy, desolate stuff. But it's so beautiful because it's been shot with such artistry. And I think, you know, sometimes the black and white is so sort of high contrast. Like the shots of the man and the planet in the film are just, they've got this sort of pure horror movie vibe. It's always one of those things that people argue is Eraserhead a horror film, and I think in so many ways a lot of how it's shot definitely leans into that. I think this also brings in, you know, the fantastic use of shadows in the film. I don't think the film would work in colour, because when you're watching it, so often so much of the screen is taken up by darkness and by just pure jet black, that it makes people's faces really pop out of the screen, or, you know, your eyes are being drawn to something in particular because it is the only thing that is lit in that shot. You know, I'm sure someone would try and tell you that this is noir because they're boring. I mean, it's got so much more of a root in, you know, your German expressionism, but that feels like doing a disservice because it is so just pure Lynch that that's what it feels like it should be defined as. I think this new Criterion release looks absolutely fabulous. I've seen this film on DVD on an older Blu-ray, and this is definitely the best version it's looked. It's been restored from a 4K print, although this isn't a 4K release, which is a bit irritating. But, you know, there are so many little details that I had never noticed before that seem to really come forward, and the sound, I'm going to get onto that later, but it is really, really good here. And I do love that this comes with a little setting on the main menu to calibrate your TV. You know, if anyone has ever heard Lynch talk about modern technology, you will know that he hates the fact that you don't see his films in cinemas, that people might watch them on an iPhone. And it's basically Lynch telling you that your telly is probably set up wrong, so he's going to walk you through how to have your telly set up. And I think that's great. I mean, just buy Eraserhead so that you know how to perfectly set your telly up. I think the film's look is helped so much by Lynch's attention to detail when it comes to set design and props. I mean, the film is chock full of fantastic little pieces of art or just weird things that you go, why is that there? I mean, I keep noticing them every time I watch the film. There's something new to see. And it is so fantastic that Lynch did that on so little money. He really does create a sense of place and of this world that has things that are familiar and yet feel so different. Also, if you are a Lynch fan, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it anyway, but you know, there are so many things that pop up in his later films that it's kind of like this awesome little just Easter egg hunt of like, oh, that's from Twin Peaks, oh, that's in Lost Highway. Effects work-wise as well, the film is just fantastic. I mean, everyone that's seen Eraserhead is going to bring up the baby because it's so gross and so weird looking, and there are so many articles online of people trying to figure out what on earth it is. And I think, I mean, for an effect that you don't see a massive amount of, to have that many people writing about it online is fantastic. But it's not the only really great effect. I mean, you know, anything to do with the lady in the radiator, all those weird things that she steps on, those are fantastic. And even stuff that doesn't perhaps ring 100% true, like the weird little chickens, they have a fakey quality that still suits the film. It still fits within the world of the film. Now, the sound, I know I mentioned earlier that the new release sounds great, but I adore the sound design in this film. It is so ridiculously good because Eraserhead is the noisiest film ever made, probably, because there are just no points within the film that there isn't just some horrible sort of industrial noise going on. If you put this on, you need to have it loud because it's just this sort of oppressiveness in such a good way. It's sort of, I don't know how to describe how it just sort of surrounds you in this fantastic, vaguely harsh sounding noise. But I don't know, it's probably like that sort of ASMR thing. It just sort of, I don't know, for me it just gets inside my brain, and I find it weirdly relaxing. And that's what makes Eraserhead so weird, is that that's kind of the score. There are just all these weird noises that are just omnipresent, dronings, or sort of some pounding hammer. And yet I think people remember that, and then they ignore the fact that the film's full of weird, like baseball stadium organ sounds, which are just bizarre because they just create this weird sense of the world. But people seem to ignore them, and I think they're fantastic. And also they give Eraserhead a really strange bedfellow with Wallace and Gromit the Wrong Trousers, which is great. And you can't talk about the soundtrack for Eraserhead without bringing up the Lady in the Radiator song. I mean, I do think that In Heaven Everything Is Fine is probably the greatest song written for a non-musical in film history. It's so good, and it's just bizarre. I love it. In case you couldn't already tell, I absolutely adore Eraserhead. I think even 40 years on, and after so many people have tried to do their own little riffs on the stuff that's in there, I still think it is such a singular, fantastic, unique film. I mean, it just keeps giving. I mean, you can watch it over and over and over again, and it still works. And I think so much of that comes down to, for a debut, it is so well made, it's so efficiently made, it technically, everything still holds up. You know, I think a lot of people go into watching Eraserhead because they've heard it's weird, or because they want to be part of that sort of trance-like state that it can put you in. But I think that does the film a slight disservice, because it is so well made, and I don't think it would have lived on if it wasn't that well made. I am going to say, you know, personally the film has a very special place for me, because although it's not my favourite Lynch film, it is the first one I saw. It is the film that I saw at far too young, that threw me into the world of experimental film and art and just weird stuff. You know, I barely even touched horror at the point that I saw this, and I do think it has fully changed the way that I look at art and at cinema. And I think the fact that a film that's made on so little money, that is just weird and, you know, black and white, and has so many things that would make people not want to see it, can have such a profound effect, is so impressive. You know, I really do think, even if you're watching this and you've never seen a Lynch film, it can feel like it's the weird place to start, because although you're starting at the beginning, it is so intense and weird, but it is such a great introduction to art cinema. I cannot recommend it enough to anyone, but especially if you've thought about getting into watching weird films, this is the perfect place to start, especially because it's, like I said, it's less than 90 minutes. So it's not like watching Holy Mountain, where it takes 2 hours plus of your life. And it's just fantastic. I know I keep saying it, but it's just so good. But that is just my opinion. Have you seen Eraserhead? Are you a David Lynch fan? Let me know down in the comments. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos, and I shall see you next time.